This is David Walker. I'm coming to you real quick about some Trx90 issues I get a lot of questions about. So I'm going to make this as quick as possible, give you a rundown on a few things. It's going to be the wiring, what wires run this machine, what wires are for the kill switch, what do all these wires mean going everywhere. It's not as complicated as it looks. I'll give you a quick rundown on that. The kill switches, the neutral safety switch, how to bypass it so you can crank it in any gear. What's the pink wire mod, and does my bike have it? We're going to look at the air valve right here, and why do we need that thing, or why don't we need that thing? A couple other things, maybe suspension, if we can go through it, and can I make it faster, and how do I do that? I'll try to cover all that, but I don't want to get anybody bored or caught up, so we're just going to move on through. First thing, wiring. Wiring basically starts at the motor. Get this guy out of the way real quick. We got 4 wires right here. We got a pink wire, a green wire, a blue wire, and a black wire. The blue wire has a yellow stripe. The black wire has a red stripe. Those 2 wires run this motor. The black wire sends power to the CDI and the coil. The blue wire is the signal bar that hits this sensor and tells the motor when it's ready to fire. Okay, so we're going to follow the wiring harness from the engine up here. Here's our first junction on the 93 through 05 Trx90. On your 06 model and up, it may want to come back here and hang out with the battery. Follow your wires where they're going, and basically going to be the same color on about all the Hondas. So here we go. Here's 2 of the wires that are not in this big plug right here. These 2 wires, you got your black with the red stripe. That's the power going to the coil and the CDI. You got your green wire with the red stripe. This is your neutral safety wire. This wire, if you want to go back down here, this wire goes to this tab. This tab on the other side of it touches the transmission. The transmission has a tab on neutral. When you click that motor over into neutral, a tab touches this green wire and grounds it. When it grounds it, it sends a ground up to the CDI saying it's okay, it's safe to crank, we're in neutral. It'll allow the ignition wire to give power to the CDI, and now you can spark. If you want to be able to crank it in any gear, somewhere between the CDI, before it gets to the motor, you need to put a ground on this. You can unplug it right here and just move it over to your ground strap if you like to. Get to the plug over here. This plug has the blue wire and the pink wire. The blue wire, again, it sends the signal to the CDI and tells the coil it's time to spark. The pink wire beside it, if you want to come back down here with me, is the other wire that goes to a transmission tab. When the transmission shifts into 4th gear, this little tab says I want to be grounded. So when you do that, it sends a signal saying, CDI, we're in 4th gear. Dad said we're grounded. We're only allowed to go half throttle in 4th gear. If you want to go wide open in 4th gear, cut this little pink wire before it ever gets to the motor. If it gets to the motor, 4th gear is going to tell on you. Alright. Air valve. Remove your air box. This is useless unless you're a government official. Alright, this introduces clean air with more oxygen back into the exhaust. As the exhaust comes out, it's hot, it's steamy, it loves oxygen, and the oxygen helps it burn off impurities before it goes out into the world. If you want to ride in the park, you might have to have this. But if you want to go faster or race or any of that kind of stuff, or just don't want this thing on there, take this hose loose, take this box off, and you just do whatever you want to with it. Throw it, kick it, slap it, hit it with a hammer, sell it on eBay. Doesn't matter, you're not going to need it anymore. Here's where it connects to the cylinder on the motor. What you're going to want to do is there's a flange down here that this bolts to. You can either cut it off and weld that up and use that as your block off plate. If you don't have a welder or you're just in a hurry or whatever, cut it off up here, go ahead and unbolt it from the cylinder. Don't do this stuff on the cylinder. Unbolt it from the cylinder, cut it off, and you're going to fold it over, hammer it, fold it over, hammer it, fold it over, hammer it. If you don't get it sealed off good, some way or another, it's going to have an exhaust leak there. Alright. I forgot to mention kill switches. Let's go back to wiring real quick. Thought we were done, didn't you? Alright, kill switch wires. Here's kill switch wires. Green, which is a ground. White and black. That's your signal that goes to your coil. Now if you put a ground on the signal to the coil, you're going to kill the firing action. So that's basically what we do. If you look down here in this bird nest of wiring, see all these green wires? They're all grounds. They all come from this right here. They all come up and they split off, and they're everywhere. What do? They go to kill switches. You've got one of these is your key switch, one of these is your on-off switch, and so on. So if you want to hook up a kill switch, if you want to hook up a tether switch or a push button switch or a tether that pulls out when the rider falls off, or if you want to bypass your key, all the key does is makes a ground. If you turn the key on, you have basically separated these two wires. You turn the key off, you have touched these two wires together, and this green ground has killed your white spark. If you go shopping for a kill switch, you want a normally open. You want this connection right here to be open. If it's closed, that means it's touching and it's killing the power. You want it open, and when you want to kill the motor, you close it. So normally when the motor's running, it's open, normally open. The 06 and up, they do have a 12 volt CDI, I believe. I'm not as familiar with all the details on the 06 and up. They might require a normally closed. If you have a 12 volt driven CDI that has a battery and all that on it, generally that's the ones that have it, you don't want to introduce a ground to your coil wire. You're going to end up having problems in your CDI over it. What you want to do is you actually want to break the connection of your hot wire or your ground wire going to your CDI. In other words, it needs that wire going to the CDI. Instead of introducing the ground to a hot wire, we're just breaking the connection of one of the wires that it does need. So that would be a normally closed switch, and when you want to kill it, you open the switch. Alright, real quick, I don't want to spend too much more time. Suspension. Why is the suspension not upgradable? You got a single A-arm right here. The single A-arm, as it flexes down or up, it wants to make the tire go out at the top or in at the top. And when that happens, for one thing, it can become very unsafe. But for another thing, this tie rod is connected to all this. So when your wheel is going in and out, that tie rod is holding the back of the wheel, so the toe is also going in and out. And at some point of travel range, up and down, if you exceed that point of safety, your wheels are going to be turned so far in the front or so far out that if you were making a hard landing or something like that, it would throw the front end out of whack so bad you could possibly flip over frontwards. So that's why people generally go with a dual A-arm setup. If you're going to go with a dual A-arm setup, a lot of the cheaper kits have the A-arms mounting way out here outside the frame. The key to the best handling setup is going to have your A-arms mounting kind of like this, as close as you can get them. That gives you the ability to have the longest A-arm without gaining overall width of the machine. If you're in competition stuck at 50-inch, you want to have the longest A-arms in between those 50 inches as you can. You don't want to use all that space up with just open area. Get your mounting points as close as they can be. That'll give you more control, give your shock more ability to control the input the A-arm is giving it. Get back here to the back. One problem with the back, you just don't have very much room between the eye mounts to work with. People say, can I buy a $300, $400 shock and make it ride better? No, you cannot. You can make it ride better, but you can't make it handle like a true race machine. You just don't have enough room here to work with. So if you want to run the stock swing arm, you may have to extend with a bracket this mounting point so that it's longer and gives you a longer room to put a longer shock to allow more overall travel. The second thing you're going to have problems with, cable rear brake. Drum brake on these, cables don't like a lot of flexing. If you do flex this one anymore, the cable's got to be longer. You got to get a longer cable or extend this one a little bit. And also these rear swing arms are a bit weak. Broke several of them. They like to break. Right up here on the pivot tube. They like to break right around here where this back mount plate's mounted in. You can see this one's been beat and welded and everything else where it's broke off before. So the thing to do back here, get an aftermarket swing arm is the best thing, so that you know it's strong, you know it's right. And that will use 300EX, 400EX, 450 axle, something like that generally. And you'll have disc brakes, you'll have your longer suspension mounting points, you'll have the ability to put a good aftermarket axle that uses width to its advantage and strength. So you'll have a lot of upgrades there if you're wanting to get serious about upgrading it.